Ma'am, you need to see this yourself. Those were the doctor's exact words as he stared at my husband's test results, his hand shaking like he'd seen a ghost. My name's Elena, 34 years old, married for 8 years. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal or dreamed of seeing justice delivered in the sweetest way possible, then this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. You're not just watching. You're part of a community that believes truth and justice always find their way. Now, let's dive in. The doctor looked at my husband's file, then at us, and finally cleared his throat. His voice was calm, professional, but the words he spoke shattered my life in one instant. Michael, your test came back. Your liver enzymes are elevated, but that's not the biggest concern. We also found traces of HCG in your system. That's a fertility drug. In men, it usually means someone has been taking fertility drugs or hormone injections. Do you know why this would be in your blood? For a second, I thought I had misheard. Pregnancy hormones? In a man? I sat there frozen, my hands gripping my bag so tightly, my fingers hurt. I turned to my husband, searching his face for an explanation, something that would make sense of this. Michael's face went pale. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His knee bounced under the table, and I saw sweat forming on his forehead. The silence was deafening. Finally, in a voice so low I almost didn't hear it, he muttered, "Elena, I didn't want you to find out like this." His eyes darted between me and the doctor, desperate, cornered. "There's someone else. She's pregnant. I've been helping her with her treatments. That's why the hormones showed up. I've been hiding it." I blinked. The words didn't make sense. Someone else, pregnant, hiding it. I stared at him as if he were a stranger, because in that moment, he was. The man I thought I knew, the man I trusted, shared a bed with, planned a future with, had been living another life, and the proof was right there in his blood test. The room felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. I heard the ticking of the clock on the wall, the rustle of papers as Dr. Wilson cleared his throat uncomfortably. My own heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. Dr. Wilson shifted in his chair. "Perhaps you both need some privacy. I'll step out for a few minutes." The door closed softly behind me, leaving me alone with the man who had just detonated a bomb in my life. "Michael," I whispered, my voice trembling. "What are you saying? There's another woman and she's pregnant?" He put his head in his hands. "It wasn't supposed to happen. It was just one mistake. But then she got pregnant and I didn't know what to do. I didn't want you to find out." I let out a shaky laugh, sharp and bitter. "One mistake? You call this a mistake? Do you even hear yourself? This isn't just one night. You've been living a lie. You've been lying to me every single day." He didn't answer. He just sat there, hunched over, like a boy caught cheating on an exam. But this wasn't an exam. This was my life. The drive home was silent, except for his half-formed apologies that floated in the air like empty smoke. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My chest felt tight, and my breath came in short gasps. "Elena, please," he muttered. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. She means nothing to me. I still love you." I slammed the brakes at a red light and turned to him. My voice was cold, flat, and steady. "Love me? You don't get to use that word. You've been giving our money, our time, our life to another woman. You betrayed me in the most humiliating way. Don't you dare call that love." He shrank into his seat, staring out the window. Good. I didn't need his excuses. When we finally reached home, I went straight to the bedroom, locked the door, and sat on the floor with my back against the bed. My body trembled uncontrollably. I pressed my hands against my chest, trying to slow the pounding of my heart. I thought about every late night at the office, every sudden gym session, every new cologne I never bought him. The signs were there, but I ignored them. I gave him the benefit of the doubt because that's what loyal wives do. Now I felt like a fool. The tears didn't come right away. Instead, I felt a burning heat rising in my chest. It wasn't just sadness. It was something sharper, heavier. Betrayal. And beneath that, something I hadn't expected, anger. Not the kind of anger that fades after shouting or slamming doors. No, this was different. This was the kind of anger that simmers quietly, that sharpens itself into something stronger. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the doctor's words over and over. Traces of HCG, pregnancy hormones, unusual in men. The memory of Michael's pale face, his broken confession, played on a loop in my mind. How could he do this to me? How could he stand beside me, smile at me, kiss me goodnight, all while carrying another woman's secret? I woke up the next morning with swollen eyes, though I had barely cried. It was more the weight of sleeplessness and the heaviness in my chest that made me feel older, weaker. For a moment, lying in bed, I wondered if it had all been a nightmare. But then I heard Michael's footsteps in the kitchen, and reality struck again with the same sharpness as the doctor's words. The humiliation burned afresh. Another woman, pregnant, and I had found out in a doctor's office, surrounded by charts and lab results like some cruel twist of fate. Michael acted like nothing had happened. When I entered the kitchen, he was making coffee. "Morning," he said, his voice too cheerful, too normal. I stared at him in silence. I wanted to throw the mug from his hand. Instead, I walked past him without a word, poured myself some water, and sat at the table. He tried again. "Elena, we should talk about yesterday. I didn't mean to hurt you. It just—" "Stop!" I cut him off sharply. "Don't you dare try to explain this away. You lied to me, Michael, for months, maybe years. And now you expect me to sit here and listen to excuses?" He sighed, rubbed the back of his neck, and muttered, "It's over with her, I promise. You and I, we can move past this." I let out a bitter laugh. "Over? She's carrying your child. How exactly is that over?" His jaw clenched. He had no answer. And I realized, in that silence, that if I wanted the truth, I would have to find it myself. That morning, while he showered, I quietly slipped into the living room and picked up his phone. He had changed his password months ago, claiming it was for work privacy. But now, I watched carefully as he unlocked it later, noting the quick dance of his fingers. 4 digits. A simple code. By the end of the day, I cracked it. Inside, I found what I expected and feared. Messages. Dozens of them. Her name was Clara. I stared at the thread of conversations between them. Sweet words, late-night chats, even pictures. My stomach turned as I scrolled. He called her baby. He promised her things. He reassured her when she worried about the pregnancy. I read until my hands shook so badly I had to put the phone down. Each word felt like a stab wound. But pain wasn't my only companion. Something else sat beside it. Cold, steady determination. I wasn't going to confront him yet. No, that would only give him the chance to twist the story, to lie again, to play victim. I needed proof. Real proof. So I began my quiet investigation. I started small. Receipts in his wallet, crumpled papers in the car, unexplained charges on our joint bank account. And slowly, a pattern emerged. Hotel bookings, dinner receipts at places we had never been together, pharmacy purchases that matched the fertility drugs Dr. Wilson had mentioned. He had been funding her treatments with our money. Each discovery stoked the fire inside me. At work, I carried on as usual, smiling at my students, marking their assignments, pretending everything was fine. But inside, I was cataloging evidence, storing it carefully like pieces of a puzzle. At night, I lay beside him in bed, his back turned to me, and thought about every lie he had told. Every late night at the office, every gym session, every time he had kissed me on the forehead while smelling faintly of her perfume. The betrayal had layers, and I peeled them back one by one. One Saturday, I followed him. He said he was going to meet a client. I nodded, pretending to believe him. As soon as he left, I grabbed my keys and tailed him discreetly. My heart pounded as I drove 2 cars behind, praying he wouldn't notice. He pulled up outside a small apartment complex across town. I parked a little distance away and watched. My stomach twisted as a woman came out to meet him, tall, slim, with long dark hair. Clara. Even from afar, I could see the curve of her belly under her dress. She was heavily pregnant. Michael wrapped his arms around her, kissed her forehead, and carried a bag of groceries inside. He looked happy, relaxed, lighter than I had seen him in months. Something inside me snapped. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, fighting the urge to storm inside and scream at both of them. But I didn't. Not yet. Because a louder voice whispered, "Wait, watch, plan." So, I waited for him to leave. I wrote down the address. I even took pictures. Him holding her hand, him carrying bags into her apartment. My hands shook, but I pressed the camera button again and again, capturing every betrayal. When he finally came home that evening, pretending he had been working late, I served him dinner like nothing had happened. I smiled when he spoke, nodded when he complained about clients, and even kissed him goodnight. But inside, I was no longer the same woman. I wasn't the trusting wife who believed his excuses. I wasn't the naive partner who ignored the signs. I was a woman building a case, brick by brick, proof by proof. And though he didn't know it yet, his time was running out. The investigation lasted weeks. I collected enough evidence to fill a folder. Photos, receipts, screenshots of messages, even recordings of his calls when he stepped outside for work. Every piece of truth felt like a weapon sharpening in my hands. Sometimes, late at night, I would stare at him while he slept, wondering if he had any idea of the storm coming for him. He looked peaceful, almost innocent, with his face relaxed against the pillow. But innocence was the one thing he no longer had. And neither did I. By the end of that month, I knew everything. Where she lived, how far along she was, how much of our money he had given her, and most importantly, I knew the exact day his lies would collapse. I had all the evidence I needed. For weeks, I had been gathering pieces of his double life like shattered glass, careful not to cut myself too deeply in the process. But now, the glass was sharp enough to cut him. I knew I couldn't just throw the evidence in his face at home. That would only lead to arguments, denials, gaslighting. He was good at twisting words, good at making me question myself. No, if I was going to do this, it had to be somewhere public, somewhere he couldn't escape, somewhere the humiliation would be complete. The perfect opportunity came one Saturday afternoon. Michael's parents had invited us over for lunch. His mother had been begging to see us more often, especially since she wanted grandchildren. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had no idea her son had already provided that to someone else. I agreed to go, keeping my face calm, my voice steady. Michael, smug as ever, seemed relieved that I was trying. He thought I was softening, that I was ready to forgive. That delusion made it easier for him to walk straight into the trap. That morning, I printed out photos, bank statements, and text messages. I slipped them into a neat folder and tucked it into my handbag. My hands trembled slightly, but not from fear, from anticipation. At lunch, the table was set beautifully, the aroma of roasted chicken and jollof rice filling the air. His mother smiled warmly at me. "Elena, my dear, you're glowing today." I smiled back politely, though inside I was a volcano about to erupt. Michael sat beside me, holding my hand, pretending for the world that we were the perfect couple. He laughed at his father's jokes, poured me a glass of wine, and played the role of devoted husband. I almost admired his performance. Almost. After dessert, when everyone was relaxed, I cleared my throat. My heart pounded, but my voice was steady. "There's something we need to talk about." Michael looked at me, confused, then forced a smile. "Elena, maybe later, not now." "No, now." I pulled the folder from my handbag and placed it on the table. His parents looked puzzled, their eyes darting between us. Michael's smile faltered. "What's this?" "Proof," I said simply. I opened the folder and spread the contents across the table. Photos of him entering Clara's apartment, screenshots of messages where he called her baby and talked about the pregnancy, receipts for fertility drugs and hotel rooms. His mother gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. His father's face darkened, his jaw tightening. Michael's face drained of color. "Elena, what are you doing?" he hissed, trying to gather the papers quickly. But I was faster. I held up a photo, him with Clara, his hands on her pregnant belly. "This is what you've been doing. Well, I cooked for you, washed your clothes, and slept beside you every night." His mother's voice cracked. "Michael, is this true?" He stammered. It's not what it looks like. She tricked me. Don't lie," I snapped, slamming the photo on the table. "I followed you. I watched you hold her. I watched you smile at her. You didn't look tricked. You looked happy." The room was silent, except for his mother's soft sobs. His father shook his head slowly, disappointment etched across his face. Michael buried his face in his hands. "Elena, please, we can talk about this privately. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," I cut him off. My voice was firm, cold, and unshaken. "Because if I had confronted you at home, you would have lied again. You would have found a way to make me doubt myself. But here, in front of your parents, you can't lie your way out of this." His father finally spoke, his voice heavy. "Michael, you have disgraced yourself and your wife." Michael looked at me, desperation in his eyes. "Elena, please, I made a mistake. Don't do this. Don't ruin us." I leaned forward, meeting his gaze without flinching. "You ruined us the day you chose her. You ruined us the day you lied to my face. I'm not the one who destroyed this marriage. You are." His mother whispered, "Michael, how could you?" The silence that followed was heavier than anything I had ever felt. He sat there, broken, humiliated, with nowhere to run. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a small flicker of relief. Not joy, not triumph, but relief. Because the truth was no longer mine to carry alone. It was out. It was undeniable. And it was his burden now. That night, we didn't speak on the drive home. He gripped the wheel tightly, his jaw clenched, his knuckles white. I sat in the passenger seat, calm, staring out the window. At home, he finally broke. "Why would you do that to me in front of my parents? Do you know how embarrassed I am?" I turned slowly, meeting his eyes. "Good. Now you know how embarrassed I've been for months, smiling in public while you lived a lie. Maybe now you understand what humiliation feels like." After that lunch at his parents' house, Michael walked around like a man with a shadow following him. The confrontation had cracked the mask he wore so well. At work, he looked tense. At home, he was quieter, less confident. He avoided phone calls in front of me. His parents barely spoke to him. But humiliation was only the first step. I wanted him to feel the full weight of betrayal the way I had felt it. And for that, I needed to go deeper. The career. Michael worked at a mid-size accounting firm where reputation was everything. He had built his image on being reliable, respectable, family-oriented. Clients trusted him because he looked like the perfect husband, the man with a stable life. But I knew how fragile that image really was. One afternoon while he was at the gym, or at least pretending to be, I made a few anonymous emails. Screenshots of the messages he had sent to Clara, a photo of him holding her hand outside her apartment. I didn't even need to add words. The evidence spoke for itself. By the next week, whispers had started at his office. He came home one evening, his tie loose, his face pale. "Someone's spreading rumors about me at work," he muttered. "Someone sent pictures." I sipped my tea calmly, watching him unravel. "Oh," I said, pretending to sound surprised. "That's terrible." He glared at me for a long moment, but he dared not accuse me, not when the evidence was real. The finances. For months, Michael had been funding Clara's treatments with our joint account. I had proof of every payment, every suspicious withdrawal. Now it was my turn to use money as a weapon. I went to the bank, pulled copies of all transactions, and met with a lawyer. The lawyer explained how I could separate my finances, freeze certain accounts, and protect myself. By the time Michael realized, half of our joint assets were already under my name alone. When he tried to use his card one afternoon and it was declined, he stormed into the house. "What did you do?" he shouted. I looked at him with cool indifference. "I protected myself. You think I'll let you waste my money on her? Not anymore." His fists clenched, his face flushed. For once, he looked powerless. But the sharpest knife of all was Clara. I knew Michael had promised her things: security, support, a future. But I also knew men like him. He would feed her sweet words until reality hit. Then he would retreat, leaving her with broken promises. So I made sure reality hit faster. One afternoon, while he was at work, I went to Clara's apartment. My hands shook as I knocked on her door, but I steadied myself when she opened it. She was heavily pregnant, her belly full, her eyes wary. "Yes?" she asked, her voice cautious. "I'm Elena," I said simply, "Michael's wife." Her face went pale. She stepped back, clutching the doorframe. I thought he was separated." I almost laughed. "Of course he told you that. That's what men like him do. But here's the truth. He's been lying to both of us. He used our money to fund your treatments, and do you know what he told me? That you were nothing, that he didn't mean for it to happen." Her lips trembled. She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. I pulled out my phone and showed her the messages. Michael's words, raw and ugly. Promises he couldn't keep, lies he had recycled between us. Her tears spilled over. She whispered, "He told me we'd be a family, that he'd leave you." I met her gaze, steady and cold. "He won't. He's too much of a coward. And when the baby comes, he'll resent you for it. That's who he is. Believe me, I know." I left her there, sobbing in the doorway, the illusion shattered. I should have felt pity, but instead I felt something sharper: satisfaction. Because now Michael wouldn't just lose me, he would lose her too. The breaking point. By the end of that month, Michael was unraveling. His parents barely answered his calls. His colleagues avoided him at work. Clara had stopped replying to his messages. His finances were slipping out of his control. And through it all, I stayed calm, collected, untouchable. One evening, he stormed into the house, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. His eyes were wild. "Why are you doing this to me?" he demanded. I stood at the kitchen counter, chopping vegetables for dinner, my movements slow and deliberate. "Doing what, Michael? You ruined my career, you turned my parents against me, you poisoned Clara against me, I dropped the knife on the counter with a sharp clang and turned to face him. My voice was icy, steady. "No, Michael, you ruined yourself. I just made sure everyone saw the truth." He stared at me, chest heaving, his face contorted with rage and despair. By the time the leaves began to fall outside our window, Michael was a shell of himself. His once proud shoulders sagged, his smile long gone. He came home later and later, his phone silent, his clothes rumpled. The man who had strutted through life with confidence was now hollow, broken, and cornered. But I wasn't finished yet. Revenge was not complete until I was free. Truly free. The legal strike. I met with my lawyer in secret for weeks, preparing every document, every piece of evidence. Infidelity, financial recklessness, betrayal, they all painted a clear picture. The law was on my side. On a crisp Monday morning, Michael came home to find an envelope waiting on the dining room table. He opened it, his eyes darting over the papers, his face draining of color. "Divorce," he whispered, as though the word itself was poison. I nodded calmly. "Yes, divorce, with all the evidence attached. Infidelity, misuse of funds, emotional neglect, you name it. It's all there." He slammed the papers down. "You can't do this to me." "Oh, but I can, and I already have. The lawyer is expecting your response." His hands shook as he grabbed the back of a chair. "You'll ruin me, Elena." I met his eyes, cold and unflinching. "No, Michael, you ruined yourself. I'm just making sure you pay for it." The public ruin. News traveled quickly. His colleagues had already whispered, but now it became official. Divorce with infidelity as the cause. Word spread among his clients, his friends, his family. Invitations stopped coming. His name, once respected, became a cautionary tale. At his firm, he was quietly pushed aside. No promotions, no important clients, no trust. He was tolerated, but only barely. I didn't need to say a word. My silence spoke louder than any gossip. The home. When I first married Michael, our house had felt like a safe haven. But after his betrayal, it had become a prison, every wall echoing with lies. So I made a decision. I put the house up for sale. Since most of the assets were now under my name, the profit would be mine. I found a smaller, brighter place, closer to work, filled with windows and light, a place that felt like mine, not ours. When Michael came home one evening and saw the for sale sign planted in the front yard, his face twisted in shock. "You're selling our house?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "No, Michael, I'm selling my house. You just happen to live in it." He stared at me as though seeing me for the first time. And maybe he was. The final conversation. The night before I moved out, he cornered me in the kitchen, his eyes red, his voice raw. "Elena, please don't leave me like this. I know I messed up, but can't we fix it? Can't we try again?" I set down the glass I was holding and faced him. For the first time, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no longing. Just clarity. Michael, I said softly, when you chose her, when you lied to me over and over again, when you made me sit in that doctor's office and hear about your affair from a stranger, you ended this marriage. You ended us. I'm not leaving you. You left me long ago. Tears filled his eyes, but I didn't flinch. I walked past him, calm and steady, like a woman stepping out of a storm into the sunlight. Thank you so much for watching till the end. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Your support keeps these stories alive, and I can't wait to share the next one with you.